Greetings, everyone, and happy Thursday. That's right, we're doing Ask Shane Anything on Thursday, and if you haven't figured it out yet, it's the new day for Ask Shane Anything. You may be wondering why we've decided to shift the day. Well, mostly it's because of Pactor Factor Live. We're going to record those every Friday, basically live with Pactor, based upon the hottest topic of the week. And so, one, we need to do that on Friday, and two, I wanted to give a little bit of space between the two episodes of Pactor Factor that we publish every week, at least give some more space. So we're not doing an episode and then a day and then another episode. This gives a little bit of a gap. It will suck that I'm not sending you guys off into your weekend anymore like I used to in the show. But to be honest with you, I don't think that ever resonated with you guys. Like, you guys never were in the comments being like, woohoo, the weekend's here. It is kind of funny. I wonder if it's a generational thing to celebrate the weekend being here. My generation, like on Friday, it's party time. Like, everybody's very happy. The work week's over. You can do whatever you want for a couple days. I feel like the younger generations don't celebrate it that way. And maybe it's because they're working the weekends. Of course, I did that too growing up. But still, I liked it when Friday hit. So anyway, I guess it doesn't matter in the end because now the show is happening every Thursday. This show is a reward for those of you who are pledging at $7 or more per month at patreon.com/SIFTD. There's a whole grip of you guys there doing that. I really appreciate it. Other patrons, if you're interested in making sure that the show keeps happening, it would be awesome if you could bump up your pledge to that amount. I'd really appreciate it. So Ask Shane isn't going away. We've just shifted to another day. And you guys, even on Thursday, have asked another batch of great questions. Let's get to the answers. First up, we have a question from Khalib Twelai. What's the oldest functioning console you have? Do you have much experience with having consoles repaired? What's the most reliable console you've ever owned? This is a great question and one that has never been asked, which is getting harder to do. It's just the law of diminishing returns. We're having it with Pactor Factor. It's like after a while, you've kind of asked pretty much every question. It becomes more difficult. So this is one that I've never heard before or even kind of been close to one I've answered before. So let's see. The first question, the oldest console I have that still works is my Atari 2600. Now, I'll be honest with you. I can't promise 1,000% that it works great. But I was able to turn it on, and I still have, believe it or not, in my bedroom at my mom's house, I still have an old CRT TV in there that still has the little screws on the back of the TV where you can plug in the Atari 2600 thing. So the wires on my little converter box where you slide from TV to game or whatever, that thing's kind of janky. So I plugged it in, and it was getting a display, but it was a little rough at times. So anyway, I think my Atari 2600 still works. Now, my only console before that was this Telestar Pong and Skeet combo thing. And it was a console that had two knobs on it to play Pong. And then you had a light gun that you used to shoot the square on the screen. That's the first console I ever got. And I have no idea where that is at this point, which sucks because it's probably worth a lot of money now. So I don't know if that one still works, but Atari 2600 does still, I think, work. So I'd say it's that one. Your second question is, do I have any experience having consoles repaired? So, I don't know how much time you spend on YouTube, Khalib Twilai, but that has turned into a cottage industry on YouTube. I have curated a couple of those videos to SIFTD. It didn't seem like they got that great of a response, but I find myself watching them late at night on YouTube. There's a couple channels where their whole thing is just buying broken consoles off of eBay and then repairing them on camera. I watch that stuff, and I will admit, after a while, it all does kind of become the same. But, if he opens up a new if he finds an old ColecoVision or an Intellivision, and he opens that and tries to fix it, then I'm sucked back in again. I can only see so many GameCubes fixed or so many PS5s fixed. But anyway, back to your question. It's a thing, repairing consoles. Now, my personal experience is I won't touch consoles. I'm not going to do it myself. Back in the GameCube days, I thought about doing a mod myself, and I ended up just sending it out and getting it done, which ended up being the right decision in the end because they did a great job and it looks all professional. So I haven't messed with consoles all that much. However, my PS4, my first PS4, I was working at one of our studios, and I went to go to the bathroom, and I tripped over the HDMI cable going into my first PS4, and it totally destroyed the HDMI port on the back of my PS4. So there is a little repair shop called AJ's Toys and Games or something, a block away from here. And I called them, and they're like, yeah, we can fix that. So I took my PS4 in there, Went in there. When I got in there, it seemed like they weren't quite as confident that they could fix it. I think they may have lied to me to get me into the store. So anyway, I left it there, and like 4 days later, they're like, we can't replace it. I don't know why, but they felt that they weren't qualified enough to replace an HDMI port in a PS4. The people I see on YouTube will repair anything. So my personal experience with console repairs has not been great. However, there's tons of empirical evidence that there are tons of people who can do it. So I think it's pretty cool that there are people out there trying to save other people's consoles to keep them from having to buy another one at full price. So I'm all about console repairs if you can find someone who's reliable to do it. And then what has been my toughest console of all time? That's a tough one, but I think it's probably the OG Xbox. I mean, that thing is literally built like a brick. I feel like I could plug that thing in 300 years from now and it'll still turn on. All my other consoles have been like at least a little bit finicky, or they feel flimsy. The Xbox, OG Xbox, is just a beast. So if I had to say like what I think the most durable console is, that's probably what I would pick. I had issues with almost every other console at one point or another, except for the OG Xbox. Now, to be fair, I also didn't play the OG Xbox a ton, other than like Halo games and a couple exclusives here and there. So maybe if I put it through its paces a little more, I wouldn't be as impressed with it. But I think most people would agree that if they have an OG Xbox, you pick that thing up, man, you could kill somebody with it. Okay, next up we have a question from Greg or G. Epic just announced that if you release a game on Epic Game Store the same day as Steam, you will get a discount on Epic's fee. Do you think this will impact anything at all? So Gregor is right. Yesterday, Epic just announced exactly what he said. If you release a game day and date with Steam, you will get a rate cut. Now, it goes from like a 5% cut to a 3.5% cut. It's like a 1.5. If you're talking huge volume, that might make a difference. And with some of these games, I mean, PC games don't sell as well as console games to begin with generally. But, I mean, there's been some banger hits on Steam lately as well. So, do I think it will move the needle? It's only a 1.5. I really feel like maybe for the big boys, like the big publishers, it might be worth their while. For indie games and stuff like that, not so much. Now, keeping in mind as well that to an indie developer, every dollar means a lot more than a big budget AAA publisher or whatever. So maybe that rate cut has a little bit more of an impact than just the money part of it as far as the brute amount of money. So I really struggle to think it's going to make that much of a difference. However, I say this a lot, not just on this show, but on Game Face, like, people are smart. The people who run these companies, I know we all like to say they're stupid and they're idiots, and they do make really dumb decisions sometimes that the consulting agency can attest to, but generally, people who are running these companies are pretty damn smart. I think Tim Sweeney's pretty damn smart, and I'm guessing he has smart people working underneath him, and they have crunched these numbers. And so, does it mean it's going to work? No, obviously, it doesn't mean it's infallible, but I do think that they probably used the right data to make this decision. Now, whether it pans out or not, who knows? Personally, I don't think it's going to pan out all that much. I think maybe you might get a couple of the really big games to release day and date, and that's honestly probably what Epic is really hoping for. I doubt Epic did this to try to get more indies to release day and date with Steam on Epic Game Store. So, it's a start, and I think you got to try something if you're Epic and you're trying to create some level playing field with Steam, which is probably never going to happen. But if you're trying, you have to try stuff like this. So I don't discredit Epic for trying to do this. I think it's smart, and I think it should try to experiment, and if it doesn't work, it should try something else. However, I am a little skeptical that we'll actually have any real meaningful results. Okay, our next question comes from AJ the Legend. Based on the constant negativity surrounding Star Wars Outlaws, which developer would you like to get a chance to make the next Star Wars game? What genre would you like to see explored? And what sort of protagonist would you like to see? Thanks for your time, as always. The first thing I'm going to say is that Star Wars Outlaws is a gigantic game. And how do I know that? Because literally, I think the last 4 episodes of Ask Shane Anything, one of you guys and girls have asked a question about it. That shows that you guys cared about it big time. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you are disappointed in it or whatever. It just means that you cared about it. You wanted it to be great. You wanted to love it. It was an important game to you. And I'm right there with you. It was one of the biggest games of this year to me. Matt took it first overall in our fantasy draft. I would have if he didn't, and luckily I ended up kind of like dodging the bullet on that one. So this is a big game, and it was a big game to you guys. You guys were excited about it, and you're still asking questions about it. So that's the first thing I'll say. Who would make a better Star Wars game? I honestly still feel like Ubisoft could still make the best Star Wars game. And I talked about this on Game Face and maybe a little bit on Ask Shane Anything about how I feel like the game was dumbed. I wouldn't say maybe dumbed down isn't the right word to use, but I think it was simplified a little bit to appeal to what Ubisoft perceived as a more casual audience who would be interested in consuming a Star Wars game. That's the wrong approach. Ubisoft should have made the game for us, for the core first, let us love it, and then tell everybody how awesome it is, and then all the casuals will jump in and buy it. And that didn't happen. And now nobody's buying it. So I think that was a mistake. But I do think that if Ubisoft just made Assassin's Creed Star Wars, it could be absolutely amazing. I don't know why it decided to go this route. I'm assuming, again, it did a lot of focus testing. It had a lot of data that was telling it to do this with the Star Wars game. I'm sure Lucas was in its ear telling it, you know what, you can't make it too hardcore. That was a mistake. So I still think Ubisoft is the right studio to make a Star Wars game. BioWare, once upon a time, obviously, was a great partner. But then I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't like to see studios like Naughty Dog or Insomniac make Star Wars games, because they're just supremely talented in so many ways. So there's a lot of studios that would make a great Star Wars game, but I don't think you should write off Ubisoft just because of this game. Now, as far as like the protagonist in the setting, I mean, it's cliche and everyone's saying the same thing, but it's got to have Jedi. It's got to have lightsabers. And it can't be that you're just hanging out with those people, although that would be an improvement over Star Wars Outlaws. It can't just be that. You need to play as the Jedi or the Sith. That is Star Wars. And again, we don't know if that was Lucas telling, Ubisoft what to do with the game. We'll never know why that decision was made either. But I do think that there are plenty of studios that can make it a good one, but I don't think you should write Ubisoft off. And I do think that if you want to make a Star Wars game that everyone's going to care about, it has to have Jedi, and it has to have the Sith. Okay, our last question for today's episode comes from Cinetyke. Having a chronic backlog due to 10 plus years of Steam sales, which in recent years has compounded by Game Pass on PC, my problem is lack of time, not availability of games. There are so many cool games out there, not to mention the constant stream of new releases. What's your take on the question many people ask? Where are the games? Can so many people really just care for the flagship big hitters? Well, here's the thing, Cinetyke. Just today, Polygon published an editorial about this very topic, and I will admit, I was shocked by some of the data that it had in that article. For example, it cited some information from Newzoo, which is a pretty common, financial consulting firm in the games industry. They do a lot of analysis of finances and things like that, do a lot of polling and collect a lot of data. And they said that just 8% of time spent playing games each year is dedicated to playing games that came out that year. I really struggle to believe that that's true. Now, we do live in this bubble where generally we consume at least 1 or 2 new games per month. And we're outliers. We're not like everybody else. And it can be easy to be blinded by that and assume everybody is just like us. That's obviously not the case. However, I don't think we're that far away from the mean. There's a reason that all these companies can stay in business. It's because people are buying games every stinking month. So that 8% figure, I struggle to believe it's true, but at the same time, I'm not going to write it off. What I'm taking away from it is that people buy far less new games and spend time playing far less new games than I thought. That's just the truth. Whether it's 8% or whether it's 30%, that's still way less than I thought. So, to your point, it seems like most people, according to Newzoo, 92% of playtime is spent on playing games that are old. So, I think there's a lot of people like you who are diving into their backlogs. They're actually playing the games that they get for free on PlayStation Plus or on Amazon Prime or on Epic Game Store. I mean, those generally tend to be older-ish games. People are playing them. People are playing the old games. People are playing through their backlog. Again, it's data. I can quibble with it and say maybe it seems a little bit off, but the overarching theme is hard to argue with, meaning that most people spend their time playing older games. So I don't know if I was pleasantly surprised to learn that or just shocked to learn that. Both, maybe? Because I do appreciate the fact that there are a lot of people who are like, I don't need to play the new hotness. There's tons of amazing games that came out last year that I can now buy for a lot less money, and that's okay with me. And that's okay with me too. Whatever you got to do to enjoy gaming, I really don't care what you do, as long as you're not hurting somebody else. And so all of it adds to the pile. If you're buying old games, that money's still going into the industry, is still going to the studios so they can make more and better games. So I really don't care whether people play new games or old games, as long as they want to hear me talk about the new games. Okay, that's it for this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything, the Thursday edition of Ask Shane Anything. And again, this show is going to be published on Thursday every week going forward. I hope you guys are having a great week. October is an awesome month for games. If you haven't watched Dossier for October yet, the crazy thing about it is, like, we cut that list down to 10 games we recommend to buy in October, and there are literally like 20 other ones that we could have put in there. The cuts were really, really hard. So this is a great month for games. Hope you guys are going to play a bunch of them. If you like this show, please consider heading to patreon.com/SIFTD and give us a pledge. For just $4 a month, you get all our content early. You get this show 4 days early, 5 days early. You get Game Face 4 days early. You get Pachter Factor a week early. All our other content at least 3 days early. And again, that's just for $4 a month. And if you don't have any money, like this show, comment on this show, share this show, share all our content. Make sure you subscribe, all that other fun stuff that helps work with the YouTube algorithm. And that has a lot of value for us as well. So have yourselves a great weekend, and we'll see you for Game Face on Tuesday.